Legislative District 21 Committee meeting. Let's see, we got a full house. There's a lot of visitors here that I've never seen or seen before. So everyone knows, we have bathrooms. There's one located right back here. There's another one located back there on the other side. And everybody knows where the door is. All right. First thing I want to do, as I always do, I ask for a volunteer to do the invocation. Do we have one? Sure. And to follow after that, the pledge. Anybody for that? Lord,
yeah, please stand in. Thank you. We all need a little bit of help. Lord, we thank you for this time together. We just ask you to bless it. We ask you to guide and direct us, give us wisdom tonight as we are about the business of watching out for our country, our state, Lord, and we just pray that you will guide us in every way. We thank you for the privilege of being Americans, and we love you, Lord. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Greg.
Time for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Treasurer, Eileen. Eileen, our treasurer, is going to give a treasurer report.
Could you turn the lights on over there?
Way over here.
Thank you.
Not sure where the lights went with that. Okay, for February, we took in $84.55, and basically right now, at the end of February, there's $3,356.60 in the checking account. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
I can't hear you.
I can hear me with the mic. Hey, I'm doing better than last week, at least in a horizontal position, even though I do still have vertigo. Okay, the ending balance is $3,356.60, and we basically took in $84.55. And I will be going around with the 50-50 raffle here in a few minutes so we can make some more money tonight.
Thank you. We'll file that for approval. Linda, where are you at? There you are. I just didn't want you to be at the table the rest of the time. All right. Tonight, we're having a special event. We're having a debate. We have two very respectable men here to govern the two sides of the debate, and the debate's going to be on prohibition of marijuana. The first speaker will be SELANDER. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah. All right. Finn used to be he's a retired DEA special agent. He's the son of a Holocaust survivor, and he grew up knowing that he wanted a career in law enforcement, fighting for truth and justice. And he watched TV shows in his youth that helped him, that made him think he wanted to help society. First, he wanted to work as a police officer in Pensacola, Florida Police Department, and then he moved on to the Drug Enforcement Administration and was posted in Miami, Florida. Ben spent some time in the Navy. He excelled in many areas, including scuba diving and salvage work, and he earned a degree in international studies, completed numerous certifications which impacted his law enforcement work, thermography, trace element collection, and agent development schools, including money laundering, marijuana investigations, asset forfeiture, and racketeer influence in corrupt organizations, so RICO. He had also become a warrior skilled in the art of the war on drugs. Special Agent SELANDER put his knowledge of marijuana investigations to work in both Florida and New Mexico. as the DEA's marijuana coordinator for 6 years. He then spent 7 years as a demand reduction coordinator. As a public affairs officer in the DEA's Albuquerque office, he encountered LEAP for the first time, which testified his concern about the real effectiveness of the drug war crusade. After returning from the DEA, he served 3 years, or 3 tours, as a contractor in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So please welcome Finn SELANDER. The way this is going to work is we're going to have 10 minutes. Finn's going to get 10 minutes, and then I'll introduce our next speaker. He'll get 10 minutes, and then Finn will get to rebut for 10 minutes, and then Mr. Montgomery will rebut for 10 minutes, and then we'll do a question and answer. Here's one on the clock.
All right, 10 minutes, put another 5 on that because I get long-winded. So, the first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for inviting me to this. I think that this is one of the most important subjects, issues that is going on today. And I guess from my bio, I have quite a bit of a background in marijuana cases. I was the coordinator in both Florida and New Mexico. And what I would like to say or begin with is, first of all, this is not a debate. It's not a debate anymore. I was in New Mexico when 9/11 happened. On 9/10, Asa Hutchinson, who was the administrator of DEA, was in New Mexico at the time to debate Governor Gary Johnson on the drug issue. And the very next day, then 9/11 happened, and we had to get the administrator out of there. But I helped the administrator prepare for the debate with Governor Johnson. And it was during that time that I started also questioning, I guess, the way we were carrying out, if you will, the drug war. Matter of fact, we started terming it, or calling it, not a drug war, but a war on society. I had, in the office there in Albuquerque, I ran demand reduction, which demand reduction is a program that most of you probably haven't heard about, and even that DEA has, but it's a non-law enforcement side of things to where you actually go in and you work with the community and you educate the community. We go into the high schools there in Albuquerque. We call the program Teens in Prevention. And it was all about educating the youth about the dangers of drugs. And there's no question drugs are bad. But it is time that we actually stop what you would call prohibition. Because from prohibition, Prohibition 1 was back when Al Capone and all was in power in Chicago, and it was the prohibition that allowed him to build an empire and do what he did. Then we have Prohibition 2, which started basically in the 70s, about 73, 74, okay? And that was when the cartels down in Colombia got built up. People like, everybody has probably heard of Escobar, Pablo Escobar, Ochoa, later, all those people. And now today, it has changed to where now it is the Mexican cartels, which is just across our border, who basically run things. There's 7 major Mexican cartels. And they are involved in the drug war, if you will, for one reason and one reason only. It's about the money. You cannot imagine the amount of money that is generated from drugs. And it's time that we sit down and discuss this and talk about it and change the way that we are doing things, because we cannot incarcerate our way out of a problem. You cannot. Our jails are full. Matter of fact, we've turned jails into commercial enterprises. How does that happen? Where you actually get paid to have, you get money to keep a certain amount of prisoners in jail. And most of those prisoners, the vast majority of them, are in there on drug charges, and of those drugs, a good percentage of those are in there on just marijuana charges. We've destroyed, or are destroying, a whole youthful generation. If you're in college, you get caught, you get busted with a joint, you would lose your scholarship if you had a scholarship. You would pretty much be marked for life. Do we want to continue the drug war the way we are? What's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And we have been doing the same thing for 40 plus years. And actually, if you really wanted to argue about it, longer than that, all the way back to, actually going back to the late 20s. And I find it very ironic that the DEA's first administrator, Ensinger, actually has come out, he's deceased now, but years ago, he came out, and at that time, DEA was called the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. And he actually came out and made a statement and said one of the worst things that he got involved with and pushed, and that was the prohibition of marijuana, throwing it in on with the other drugs. So with that, I hope tonight it will be a discussion, talk about the facts, and in the end, with the facts and all, you can make the, I say, wise decisions. But it is time that we change the heading that we're on.
Thank you, Mr. Selander. Our next speaker will be Bill Montgomery, the county attorney. And Bill Montgomery was first elected Maricopa County Attorney in a special election in 2010 and re-elected in 2012 on a pledge to fight crime, honor victims' rights, and protect and strengthen our community. As a West Point graduate, decorated Gulf War veteran, former deputy county attorney, and a professional prosecutor, he has dedicated his personal and professional life to serving others. Bill earned his JD from ASU's College of Law, graduating magna cum laude and receiving the Order of the Coif.
Good hair.
Rub it in. Go ahead.
As a prosecutor with Maricopa County Attorney's Office, he quickly gained a reputation as an aggressive prosecutor, later serving as a bureau chief of the Auto Theft Bureau, which recorded a 35% drop in auto theft under his leadership. As county attorney, Bill is committed to vigorously prosecuting crimes and holding criminals accountable. He believes in a responsible, applicable of Arizona's tough sentencing laws to ensure violent and repeat criminals are kept away from our fellow citizens and communities. He is committed to partnering with law enforcement along with business and civil leaders to protect and strengthen communities, and has been an outspoken advocate for holding criminals who harm our children accountable. So with that, I'd like to welcome County Attorney Bill Montgomery.
Do I get the balance of fence time? Can everybody see the screen all right? Okay. I'm not going to have it in front of me, so any time you're not able to see it, just throw something over here. Real quick, I think everybody here is generally familiar with the circumstances that we have within Maricopa County and the nature of the
I don't know
laws.
if the microphone quit or it's not close enough.
How's that?
Better.
I'll speak up. Real quick, we're going to focus on marijuana this evening. That's another chart that I've used in the past to address some of the circumstances that we face with unique drug trafficking that we have within Maricopa County. The status of marijuana within Arizona, you can see there. And I do want to note, though, that within Maricopa County, the Medical Marijuana Act failed by over 4,000 votes. And with respect to the monies that were raised, the Marijuana Policy Project, almost $800,000, the majority of that was funded by George Soros, who also funds a number of other groups, to include LEAP. Now, where we're at with our medical marijuana program right now, and it's important to understand what happened with the Medical Marijuana Act. Because just as we were lied to there, we're going to be lied to about what the impact is going to be for recreational use and what the circumstances are there. So we're now at over 63,000 card holders. And here's the demographic breakdown, where almost half of all the card holders, well, 67%, about 2/3 of card holders are males, 1/3 are female. And about half of all the male card holders are under 40. Now, I remember what it was like to be a young man not all that long ago, and I didn't have to get high to forget what it was like to be living or be suffering that much pain. Less than 5% of the conditions that have been used to qualify for a medical marijuana card are what we told it was going to be for: cancer, wasting disease, hepatitis C, glaucoma, or multiple sclerosis. The overwhelming majority of the qualifying condition is severe and chronic pain, which is entirely subjective and can be addressed by other types of medications, including cannabinoids that have been rescheduled to Schedule II. And here is a couple of graphs to show you the increasing numbers of those who are applying for medical marijuana cards over time. So the program is going to continue to grow as it's currently been put together. And why is that a problem? Because we're seeing an increase in where teens are getting their marijuana from those with a medical marijuana card. In fact, for 8th graders, the increase was over 28%, for 10th graders, 23%, and for 12th graders, almost 19%. The increase from year over year in the Arizona Youth Survey. If anybody has questions about the information that I'm sharing, I will share with you the data source. You can email me in my office. My email will be at the end of this, and I'll share all the sources of data with you. Now, what's alarming about this, too, with the increased availability and where teens are getting the marijuana from, is the perception of risk. The two categories that are circled right there include, on the left, the perceived risk of trying marijuana once or twice, and on the right, the perceived risk of smoking marijuana regularly. Folks to the far left of that chart there, it identifies that teens perceive the risk of smoking one or more packs of cigarettes per day almost 6 times more than smoking marijuana regularly. Twice as much do they believe that drinking 1 or 2 alcoholic beverages nearly every day is a risk. 5 times, roughly, think drinking 5 or more drinks once or twice a week is a risk. All of this in excess of what they believe is a risk of using marijuana. And ironically enough, in a state where we try to tell kids that marijuana can be medicine, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, again, 4 to 5 times more believe that it's more risky to use prescription drugs without a doctor telling them to take them than it is to use marijuana.
That's the truth.
Now, the data right here, again, from the Arizona Youth Survey, does show the usage rates. And what I've got italicized and underlined there is actually the different grade cohorts. Because you start off with 8th grade in 2010, that then is your 10th grade in 2012, and that's your 12th grade in 2014. And along the way there, we can see that even though initial usage rates in 2010 for grade 8 for marijuana was relatively low, what we see is that increasing over time with that particular grade cohort, representing a danger in time of more teens using marijuana. The lifetime use, we see a similar pattern with the different grade cohorts. And I've highlighted too the other particular amounts with alcohol and cigarettes. I'll try to go quickly. Time's flying by. Now, one of the problems with the data, though, and they're seeing this in Colorado, is that while it looks like usage rates may be the same at different age groups, These are the increase in expulsion rates for students using marijuana in Colorado and other drugs. Those students are not in school to take those surveys. So the data is starting to be skewed, where students who are in school are not the ones who are the regular users, and maybe occasional users. So the data is starting to show that those who are staying in school, their usage rates are staying flat. But we're missing out on the population of teens who are dropping out of school. Now, from the 2012 youth survey as well, there were 32,000 students who had never tried marijuana but indicated they would try it if it were legalized. And 76,000 students who were occasional users would use more regularly. So that gives us a population of roughly 108,000. And with a teen addiction rate of 1 out of 6 who become addicted, not everyone, that's not the argument, but 1 out of 6, we risk up to 18,000 teens then becoming addicted. And with the increasing number of studies that are being published around the world, England, America, Australia, New Zealand, the objective data is indicating that use among teens increases the risk of suicide as well as the early onset of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, a loss of up to 8 points of IQ, and structural and chemical changes to the brain structure and its operation, most notably affecting dopamine, which is the motivational and reward aspect of brain chemistry. That means we have 18,000 Arizonans less hopeful, less capable, and in greater need of assistance. It's not a benefit. Real quickly, the next few slides, I wanted to compare for you, because if we look at what our drug policy has been, I don't call it a drug war, I've been to war, I know what that looks like, this is not a war. But if we look at what we want effective drug policy to be, less than 10% of Americans are regular drug users. But yet we're seeing too, at the bottom there, that marijuana was used by almost 81% of current illicit drug users, being their drug of choice. And the daily use is increasing. Now compare that to other usage rates for substances. So we've got 52.2% of Americans age 12 or older are current drinkers of alcohol. And for tobacco, it's 25.5% for that same population in that age range. So alcohol's 52%, tobacco's over 25%, and we've been able to keep the usage rate for drugs in America under 10%. I think that's success. And those charts just validate that, or another way of depicting that information. Now, when you look to, because there's been an argument as well that, well, if we legalize marijuana, we can cut back on some of the other use, particularly of alcohol, and the data is not supporting that. We're seeing that there is a co-occurrence rate very high among those using tobacco and alcohol along with marijuana. But argument's just not objectively supported. And here's what we're seeing also with respect to DUI marijuana investigations within Arizona over time. And we're seeing an increasing use for THC in the blood and not the metabolites. Now, what are we doing in response, though, in this particular area? We're working on prevention and awareness and diversion and treatment, and we prosecute where warranted. It's not the first and foremost tool. In fact, in Arizona, the first 2 possession or use offenses, you can't go to prison. We can't ask for jail the first time. It very rarely gets imposed, so we never ask for it the second time. And when you look at our diversion numbers, what we've done over time, this is where the emphasis really is, particularly for marijuana. This is the lifetime commitments to Arizona prisons. It's less than 3,000, and not all of those possession of marijuana offenses started off as possession offenses. Many of those have been pled down for possession for sale or trafficking. This is the national incarceration rate, 3.7%. I believe that's what I've got up here for you. Yeah, Bureau of Justice Statistics, 3.7% drug possession across the entire country, including federal and state prison. And that's my contact information. Within, actually I'm gonna go back real quick. I've got 3 seconds. Down there at the bottom will show you that the last 3 times we've surveyed Arizona prison for the current demographics there. In 2009, we had roughly 184 people in a possession of marijuana offense for their incarceration. And I just told you that you can't go the first 2 times. And most recently in 2013, it was 131. That's it, out of 42,000. That represents 0.3% of the population. you gotta work hard to go to prison for possession of marijuana. And again, most of those are gonna be pled down from drug trafficking or drug sale cases. My office handles these. I know this data is good. I've seen it. Thank you very much.
Information, please.
Oh, yes. You put that down for the minutes? I'll leave that.
Thank you, Bill. Ben, rebuttal?
Wow. I'm not sure what to rebut. That was just some facts about some arrest, marijuana. My question is this: if that bill says that you have to have 3 strikes against you before you go to prison or go to jail, I would ask him what would happen to a college-age student, 18, 19 years old, that had a 1/4 ounce marijuana, and they had a scholarship. Would they lose that scholarship? I think so.
Yep.
That is the law.
You won't get a job either.
You talk possession, yes, it is true. Many cases are pled down to the lesser offense, okay? So, absolutely, he was right, you know, I say with some of those stats. However, let's put it like this: 60%. 60% of the cartel's money is generated from marijuana. Now, do you want the proverbial black market, underground market, to control, if you will, marijuana, to be able to sell to our kids? Or would you want to structure it like we do cigarettes and alcohol and control it, tax it? As a matter of fact, all the information coming out of Colorado, and they just published it about 3-4 days ago, is absolutely positive with the rates. What they thought would happen absolutely hasn't happened. Now, I'll be straight with you. There is a slight increase in usage, but that is expected. That will go down. Okay, it's, you know, I say going to be controlled. What happens? You talk to any teen today, and I used to work with teens quite a bit, and they will tell you that it is easier to get a hold of liquor, anything other than marijuana. I say it's time that we control it, tax it, and control it.
Why do we got to tax everything?
What's that?
What,
Yeah.
we got to tax it? Can we just legalize
Questions
it
at
and
the
tax
end,
the
please.
Mexicans that bring it in? Can you tax them at the border and just let them bring it in?
Do that?
At the end.
What's that?
I'm just saying, let the cartels bring it in legally, tax them at the border, tax those people.
Well, the thing is jobs. Matter of fact, that's another thing that's very positive that's coming out of Colorado. It has
You
created quite
guys
a few
laugh,
jobs.
but if you let them bring it in, they're already bringing
Please,
it in.
questions at the end.
Well,
Order.
I'm sorry.
No, we
It's a
absolutely
touchy
no. I
subject.
will be glad. Man, let's talk about that. You know, at the
I
end,
really would. I'd like to
questions
sit down
and
and
stuff
talk
like
about
that.
it.
But the thing is the cartels, the black market, they are so powerful. Matter of fact, that is part of the reason the police today, it is not protect and serve anymore. It is more like they are a paramilitary force. And they have to do that because of the drug war, because it is so dangerous. The cartels, they outgun us. They pretty much, they have the money to get the best of the best when it comes to equipment. And what do we see today, though, is police with up-armored trucks just making a raid. Okay? I mean, they have literally turned into a paramilitary force, but that is because of the drug war. That's it. Yeah, I
I have a quick question?
We're holding the questions until everybody's done their rebuttal. Now, Bill has 5 minutes up for his rebuttal.
That's okay. Here's what would happen to that student who had a quarter ounce. The first time that they got busted for it, they're going to be offered deferred prosecution, where if they successfully complete treatment, there'll be no prosecution. Their scholarship is not at risk. The second time that they do it, then they're going to get a diversion, where we'll file the charge initially, but if they successfully complete treatment, we won't go through with the prosecution, or they'll wind up with a misdemeanor. It's only the third, fourth, certainly the fifth time through, you then start looking at serious consequences where there could be a felony prosecution and a conviction. We're not spending all of our time on it. We're spending our time trying to identify those who can be diverted and go through deferred prosecutions and substance abuse treatment and not have those consequences, and focus more on the violent and repetitive offenders. And our shooting yesterday in Mesa didn't have a damn thing to do with drugs. And what law enforcement winds up having to do around the country isn't always related to drugs. You no more make the police departments a military organization, and we can make the Diamondbacks a football team by giving them used shoulder pads from the Cardinals. The incarceration argument, therefore, is false. In the usage rates, when we look at alcohol and tobacco, regulation has done a wonderful job keeping that away from teens and keeping usage rates down. And you're not going to get enough taxes in order to cover the societal costs. In FY14, we recovered just under $400 million in alcohol and tobacco-related taxes in Arizona. About 40 some odd million, close to 50 million was from alcohol. The cost to us from alcohol-related collisions last year alone in Arizona was $500 million. Healthcare costs for tobacco were upwards of $1 billion. The only place where we almost broke even was on access, where the cost to us for healthcare for tobacco on access was a little bit less than the taxes that were collected. The other thing you need to understand is this. Criminal organizations are criminal organizations. Gangs did not go away after Prohibition. They went to other types of crime because they want to get money easy, and they will continue to do that. Cartels will not go away if you legalize drugs. They'll find other endeavors. They haven't gone away in Colorado. There's still a black market in Colorado. There's still a black market for tobacco and alcohol. I'll remind you of the gentleman in New York who died at the hands of, well, I won't say the hands of, grand jury didn't indict, but who died in that confrontation with law enforcement. He was selling untaxed cigarettes. So it's a fallacious argument. The other thing we need to keep in mind, too, is that we were promised when Prohibition was ended that the gangs would go away and the violence would go down, and we would see revenues raised by being able to tax alcohol, and there would be more jobs. We have to keep in mind, too, that that occurred during the Depression, where there was a lot of a drive to create more jobs and to get more money in. But I would ask you this. Is this a federal government you want to give more money to? Is this a federal government you want to ask to regulate and control one more thing?
They already are.
I don't think so.
They already are.
So even that argument itself, I don't think stands up with our practical experience in trying to deal with the federal government, let alone local governments. The lure of additional tax revenues is just that. It's a lure. And I think we all can recall a story of where somebody at one time was invited to take a bite of an apple because it would give them great wisdom. That didn't work out so well last year.
It's all about jokes.
I'm supposed to get misdirection.
County Attorney, at this point, we're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to give both the County Attorney and Mr. Selander a microphone, and we'll have 2 other microphones for the audience. Ted over here will have one. Chris, you want the other one?
Okay.
And that's how we'll do it. Testing. Testing. Testing.
All right, this will be timed. 10 minutes. Speed round. Any questions?
Yeah, get the mic.
Go ahead. You start first, Chris.
Thank you. My name is Alex Romero. I'm with Drug Watch International. The one thing that hasn't been discussed so far is that the intent of legalization of medical marijuana and now recreational marijuana is all part of a scheme that was dreamed up in the early 90s. I have videos of the conference where it was planned and the printed out text of what was said. They plotted and planned exactly what has happened. First the medical marijuana and then the recreational marijuana. But the ultimate goal has always been, now listen to these groups, MAPS, Rick Dolan, these are the people behind it. Those are the high-ranking druggies, all right? So what they plotted and planned has come true. So you need to know what's on this disc. I'm going to leave it with the county attorney, and I'll share it with anybody who gives me a business card. Thank you.
Okay, we've got one back here now. Question?
Yes, this is mainly directed to Bill Montgomery. When you were talking about the stats as far as pain, I'm 59 years old. I ruptured 3 discs in my back in 1979. I'm allergic to codeine, hydrocodone, oxycodone. I've used cannabis only. I've had cancer, pancreatitis, diverticulitis, broke both hips. I can't take pain medication. You say there's something else out there. My doctor took an oath to do no harm. I have 0 side effects from cannabis. Those other drugs would kill me. Where's my other option? You say it's not medicine, I challenge you. It is, you're not a doctor. Keep out of the medicine business. Thank you.
And we don't create medicine through popular vote in America.
Amen.
And yeah, I don't have an MD, I have a JP.
God gave us medicine.
God gave us poison ivy too, but you're not going to rub it over your skin for a rash. The point that you're raising, look, you may be one of the 63,000.
Thousands and thousands.
You may be one of the 63,000. But you know what? Every single time I raise this point, there's always someone who says, I've got pain that can't be treated by anything else. There are plenty of other options.
Where is my option, sir?
Go to the FDA. You go to the FDA and get involved in another study. They've opened up another study on how to address the different components of cannabis. And you can't tell me which of the 400 elements of cannabis is addressing your pain for any one of those conditions.
I use whole plant.
Can't.
Whole plant therapy works great.
Yep, and we don't do medicine any other way. We haven't legalized cocaine in order to use Novocaine.
I don't want to use cocaine, sir.
We haven't legalized opium in order to take.
Yes, we have, sir. Heroin. I mean,
we can
all of our opiates.
Order, please.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question.
Hello. First of all, thank you both for being here. I have a comment and a question to both of you. Mr. Selander, one of the things that my comment is that you mentioned a lot about the money and the prison, but what I fail to see many times in proponents that you are is that you don't talk a lot about the victims of marijuana use. And I want to go back to a study and ask you a question. It goes back to 1994, and the epidemiology data is pretty clear in that if you look at all of the accidents, auto accidents in the world, and you say that there's about 300,000 deaths per year and about 10 million injuries, if you look at the illegal substance that is in most of those individuals, it's THC. So my question to you is, if that is worldwide and we now legalize marijuana or release this prohibition, don't you think that that's going to have a multiple effect and create more victims? And so that's my question to you. And to Mr. Montgomery, my question is, with alcohol, it's pretty clear in your prosecution, you know, the levels of what is under the influence. But with marijuana and THC, it's a little less clear. Do you find any challenges with prosecution given the levels of THC and blood? So those are my questions. Thank you.
I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. I'm not familiar with that study. When you say that THC was found in the blood, and you're saying how many thousand?
Okay, so this is a 1994 study, and in 1994 they did a mega study, and what they found is that when you looked at all of the accidents, auto accidents worldwide, that over 300,000 people annually, roughly, are killed, with about 10 million people. And if you look at drugs involved in those accidents, or reasons for those accidents, the number one cause, or attributed cause, wasn't alcohol, it was THC, it was cannabis. So if you legalize, I mean, that's just data, that's in the peer-reviewed literature.
I would challenge you to produce, say what study that was, because I have never ever come across.
Well, this is actually in a peer-reviewed study, and so it is available, and I certainly can produce it.
Let's move on to the next question.
Okay.
He had another question.
He had one other question, and had to deal with, because there are finite levels of alcohol that we know everybody is impaired by, 0.08. Is there any sort of a measure for THC? And if not, what kind of difficulties is that for them? There is not, some states have gone to 0.05 nanograms per milliliter, or 0.5, actually I think 5 nanograms per milliliter. We don't have any criminalists within Arizona who are confident enough in the studies that have been done to date who would then be willing to testify to that in court. So we don't have a per se limit within Arizona. And I do think we need to do further study on that. And just to loop back real quick to the gentleman's earlier question though, I'm not opposed to additional studies to figure out medicinal application of marijuana. I mean, we should. We've identified medicinal uses for other previously Schedule I drugs. I think there should be a concerted effort, given what some of the studies have suggested to date, that we could look at other medicinal uses and elements of marijuana to do it. But I think it's irresponsible to give someone all 400 plus compounds when only 1 or 2 might be necessary.
Next question?
My question was, I agree with the people that need it for medical use. I don't have a problem with them getting it, but I want to know why it's not sold in pharmacies versus dispensaries. If they have to go to a doctor to get a prescription, why can't we sell it in Walgreens or? I mean, if it,
And it's a fair question, and I think with, in addition to the studies that I mentioned earlier that are now identifying the long-term harms to chronic use, there are enough studies that have indicated, and unfortunately that's as far as studies have gone today, where scientific studies that have been peer-reviewed can say that there are indications that there are compounds within marijuana that can provide relief for particular types of conditions. But we haven't gone to that next level yet. And some of it, arbitrary, I'll call them arbitrary impediments to being able to conduct additional extensive research into marijuana are present. There are additional hurdles before you can even get access as a researcher to marijuana in order to test it that aren't present if you want to test cocaine or opium. I think it should be treated equally across the board with those other substances to identify whether or not it really should be a Schedule II drug and which components can be used. In which case then it would be available with a prescription, so we'd have a dosage amount for specific conditions, and then it would be available in a controlled environment from pharmacies. That's very different though than recreational use, and I don't want to confuse the two.
Right, no. Jason, how are we doing? 1 minute. 1 minute left.
There's a man right here, it's got the microphone.
I got just one question. Well, lots of questions, but one I'll ask. Will the cartels try and take over the small marijuana operators? I mean, that to me, I can tell you as a kid, I grew up in a moonshining area, and they said in the old days that yes, indeed, the city boys came down and played rough.
Yes, they will, and they already have started in Colorado.
I would argue that they definitely would like to what they see is their 60% of their profit is being taken away from them, and so obviously they still are involved. As a matter of fact, when you look at medical marijuana, states where they just have medical marijuana, the demand is so high, a lot of the growers, the providers, well, are actually somewhat involved in some underground grows, okay? And it makes it bad for some of the other, when I say legitimate medical providers, to, well, it just gets them in trouble. That's what when they see DEA, all these other agencies, you've read where they've gone in and they've raided these various pharmacies and stuff. The reason they're doing it is many of these places will have, when I say black market grows, their own grow because the demand is so high. When Colorado initially legalized marijuana, the demand was so high that literally dispensaries sold out within days, you know, actually within hours. They had days worth of stuff they sold out within hours. And so, again, we're back to the same question. It's all about prohibition, okay? By having prohibition, you're literally creating the ability for, if you will, the cartels, organized crime, to come in and control it. Just by saying we want to legalize it, tax it, if you will, but control it. You've got to have, when I say control, you've got to get the black market away from it, or else all that money, they turn it over, they buy weapons, they buy the best communications, and you're constantly, it's just a vicious circle. Common sense. 20 years ago, when you talk about marijuana or whatever, it was the same price on the street as it is today, okay? And have we really got anywhere other than we incarcerate per capita the most people on the planet of any country. Per capita, we incarcerate just over the drug issue. And like I say, the stuff that's coming out of Colorado right now, all the information, is actually very, very positive. And so I challenge you. I said, you know, you don't have to, I say, believe me or Bill, you know. Get on the internet, read, check the facts, you know. I say, just go to the LEAP website. A lot of information is there.
So real quick, I know we got to go. I'm happy to come back again at a later date and talk more. But the incarceration rate thing, I got to mention, it's an unfair comparison.
Speak louder.
The incarceration rate's an unfair comparison because they include all of those who are detained for immigration deportation in that number. No other country in the world has a similar immigration setting like we do. They also include an outer jail population, which can turn over in 24 to 48 hours in some locations. It's not static throughout the year. And the other problem, too, is they also include numbers of incarcerated who are seriously mentally ill. We do that in the U.S. In other countries, particularly in Europe, they still restrict their liberty, but they put them in a medical setting, and they don't call it incarceration. But those numbers don't count. And I challenge you to find another country in the world that is transparent as we are when it comes to those who are detained and report their numbers accurately and get that counted against them.
So
in
do your numbers
Arizona,
count?
our prison population, 11% of it are criminal aliens. And yet that gets double counted against us for the so-called incarceration rate in Arizona too. So go ahead and read it on the internet. I'd like to have a conversation after that.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I have to get on the rest of my meeting. Thank you for your getting Ms. Montgomery and